Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Enriched Mindset Podcast. I'm Victoria. I'm a fourth-year BA Psychology student with a minor in project management at the University of Guelph, and I'm personally really passionate about people experience, change, and digital enablement.
And I'm Fiona, a University of Guelph alumni with a BA in Psychology, and I love learning more about the world through human behavior and understanding why we do what we do. On this podcast, we're all about bridging the gap between what we learn in class and what it looks like to build a meaningful career in the real world.
And today's episode is such a good example of that. The intersection between psychology, organizational change management, and the rapidly evolving world of AI at work.
We are so excited to be joined by someone who's right at the crossroads of people, technology, and transformation.
Today, we're joined by Joey Ha, a Senior Associate in Digital Enablement Services at KPMG, where Joey focuses on Gen AI enablement and organizational change management. Joey is also pursuing a PhD in Applied Organizational Psychology at Hofstra University, and Joey also has experience delivering enterprise-wide transformation and human capital advisory work. We're especially excited to talk about how Joey has woven together psychology, consulting, and AI, and what that journey has actually looked like behind the scenes.
Joey, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're genuinely so excited to have you on. How are you doing with us today?
I'm doing great. I don't think I could top that bio. It's over now. But thank you. Thank you
awesome.
for really outlining that for me.
Of course.
Well, that's so good to hear. So before we dive into your story, we do have a bit of a tradition on this podcast.
Yeah, so every guest has to endure a couple of very questionable dad jokes. And if you're ready for that,
yeah, just prepare.
Perfect. So for our first one, why was Allen Iverson hired to join HR?
I don't know.
Because they wanted to bring more AI into the workforce.
He's like, oh, sure.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Sorry, that's painfully on theme for today. The second one is, why did the change management consultant bring a ladder to the office?
I'm lost here.
Because they heard the company wanted to take transformation to the next level. We got it.
Alrighty. So I guess we'll end your suffering there and we can get into the real questions now. So starting off with your career journey, so you moved from undergrad in psychology to grad school, and now you're pursuing a PhD while working in consulting. So looking back, would you describe your path as pretty linear, or did it evolve through unexpected experiences?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, my path has been relatively traditional and linear. Starting from my undergrad experience at University of Maryland, where I took a course on IO psychology, and graduated from that program and got my bachelor's in psychology. Went on to pursue my master's in IO psychology at University of Baltimore, as well as eventually ending up in the PhD program that I'm at today at Hofstra University. But I would also kind of supplement that with a few blips of moments that I've had along the way that I believe did reaffirm my passion and drive for our field of IO psychology.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know that's one of your follow-up questions, so happy to dive more in detail there as well.
Yeah, of course.
That's awesome. Okay, so the next question. Along that journey, were there any key moments or mentors who shifted your perspective or really fueled your decision to lean into applied organizational psychology and research specifically?
Yes, I think given the nature of my work, a lot of what I do is project dependent or project based, and a lot of these key moments made me reflect on my prior experiences, usually at the end of these projects. And the reason why I mention this particular timing of this project is because at the end of it all, you can really see the rewarding and fulfillment experiences that you may notice from your clients or stakeholders, given that you've successfully executed and implemented a strategy that you and your clients may have been working towards for a good amount of time.
Right.
And especially if you get to stick around to see the implementation of that strategy, to see your results come to life and impact over thousands of people at an organization is what truly made me feel fulfilled for what I do in my field.
I think that's great. And I know you really highlighted how it feels so rewarding after such a long journey on certain projects. But how can you explain to me any of the setbacks or tough moments kind of leading up to like that big feeling of reward?
Yes, I'm gonna use one project as an example here. Um, with the work that I do with change management and digital enablement overall, I know in AI or just the industry in general is changing these days, but previously, a lot of times, change management didn't really have a seat at the table from the get-go, and a lot of the stakeholders that I've interacted with previously before on previous projects, um, I've it seemed like a lot of the procedural and the data and the tech components were deemed mission critical, whereas the human-centered perspectives and the human behavioral elements of what you're driving for that project sometimes came in as a second-hand support system there as well. And
Yeah.
so, because of these key elements of really diving into the human behavior of why we do things at work, I believe that these moments allowed me to kind of really reflect the gravity of why it's important and start advocating for having that seat at that table.
That's great. Awesome. So we'll move on. So you have this strong psychology background, and now you're working in digital enablement and organizational change at a big firm like KPMG. Can you tell us a little bit about KPMG and what has it actually been like bringing a psychology lens into that kind of fast-paced consulting environment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as you may be aware, KPMG is a large global organization. We offer audit, advisory, and tax services, and recently just started a law service arm as well as part of the firm. In terms of being in a highly matrix organization, I believe having the organizational psychology background and bringing that human behavioral component into our work helps kind of differentiate what we do, especially on the client side or if it's more internal facing, just in terms of supplementing that procedural element for work there. So I think the unique opportunity that I have with my organizational psychology background is to be able to do that deep dive analysis into the human behavioral realm and understand what may be driving resistance to change or driving some of the issues that we may be facing at the surface level. So, for example, I know a lot of our friends in clinical psychology or other realms of psychology emphasize the qualitative analysis piece of getting into those findings there, whether it's in the form of interviews or focus groups or just having a discussion and trying to extract some of those key themes based on some of the challenges that they may be facing. A lot of these principles and methodologies can be replicated in the workplace and start diagnosing what those human behavioral issues may be, and then you can start correlating some of the quantitative data that you might be capturing, whether it's in the form of a dashboard or some sort of a tech usage, whatever that may be, and start identifying those points throughout the trend of why these issues may be occurring and thus impacting the overall kind of systemic level of the quantitative measure there.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting and kind of a personal question that I have, and one that a few other people that I've talked to have is what does a day in your life look like as a consultant? I know you just talked about all of the technical aspects, but from driving to work to getting into the office after you step foot into that door, what does your day usually look like? Is it all the same? Does it vary?
Yeah, I like to look at this question from a more of a weekly or monthly perspective. I do want to caveat that currently the project or the work that I'm involved in right now is internal facing, where I'm responsible for helping our leadership and our business, KPMG as a business, with using and adopting AI. So I'll tackle that from that lens and happy to kind of bifurcate that with more of my external consulting facing experiences as well. So on a regular basis for my current AI internal project, you can see me getting into the weeds of what are some of the key success metrics that our leadership or that certain groups across the organization may value, and start interfacing with those stakeholders and POCs, and figure out a way, a process to start capturing those success metrics, whether that's in the form of a dashboard or Excel or some sort of a reporting system. And then from there, you can see me at the intersection, kind of liaisoning between our Power BI teams or technical teams that could help kind of funnel those data sources so that we can capture those reporting elements. You can also see me workshopping these requirements with our leadership as well. You can also see me being deep in Excel, doing the analytical heavy lifting and trying to identify the correlations and the analytical trends that may be occurring as part of the requirements that were being prioritized. You could also see me, maybe at the end of it all, you could also see me reporting out these trends and analyses to our leadership in the form of PowerPoint and pointing out, highlighting some of the key metrics that we've identified and capturing that storytelling perspective for our leadership, just in terms of what may be driving these measures that are in place.
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Yeah, in-depth, thank you so much answer. So kind of to just build off on that, so either from trying to like develop these metrics or even just simply from trying to tell the story, like you said, what have been some of the biggest lessons that you've learned about helping people embrace change as well, driven by technology, and rather than resist it? How do these all interplay, and what was something that you just really noticed that, hey, for next time, maybe I'll take note of that?
Yeah, I think a big key takeaway from what I do is you need to understand the audience that you're working with and meet them where they are. And the reason why I bring this up is because whatever enablement or change management tactic that you develop may not be cookie cutter and applicable for every other stakeholder group that you were able to identify and analyze. So let's say you're implementing a new tech solution, whether that's Oracle or Salesforce. There might be folks who are already super experienced and well-versed in their industry. And for you to come in with a perspective of, hey, this new technology will help you do your job better and make you more efficient. Sometimes, depending on where they are within this learning journey, they may not be embracing of the technology. And so identifying, okay, what are the reasons why they might be having this sentiment, diagnosing and identifying what these issues may be, and once you have that identified in place, that's when you can start developing the appropriate tactics to help them become better and do their job a little bit more efficiently. So that's why I think it's important for you to meet them where they are so that you can craft the right story for your impacted audiences.
Yeah.
And of course, speaking to other change elements, just having the right change champions to cascade some of the success stories could also play a huge factor there.
Yeah, I think that was such a great answer.
Yeah.
So kind of like as a summary in my head, I'm thinking, so get to know your stakeholder, and also the more you get to know them, the better you are able to engage them into this change initiative that you're planning out. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Do you find that most people have a hard time embracing the new technology? Like, is it most people, like, or does it happen that often?
It does happen more often than you might think.
Yeah.
I think it's depending on the culture of the organization that you might be working with,
Right.
or the systems or the processes that are in place, whether they're super outdated and you need to transition legacy systems into a new future state. There's a lot of variables out there, and that's when the change impact assessments is what we call it. That's when some of those procedures could come in handy for you to start identifying what those barriers to a change may be.
Interesting. Okay, true. So the next question, for students and emerging professionals who want to work at the intersection of people and technology, maybe in roles like yours, what is one piece of advice you'd give them as they think about their next steps?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would highly recommend, especially for younger students who are getting their feet wet in the consulting industry or just the workplace in general, I think it's important for them to take a step back and truly understand what drives you to pursue this XYZ field. And once you have that sort of answer in place, my next recommendation will be start identifying maybe 2 to 3 industries that does excite you, that you're passionate about, whether that's retail, oil and gas, energy, financial services, whatever that may be, and also complement that with 2 to 3 skill sets that you would like to be an expert in, whether that's related to developing strategic communications, data visualization skills, coding, whatever that may be. Start identifying what we call in consulting the horizontals as well as the verticals, being the industry as well as the skill sets, the service offerings that you may provide, and start kind of crafting your brand that way so that you can start becoming competitive, and that way you know exactly what you like and what you want to get out of your career, as well as aligning some of the industries that you may be honing in on.
Oh, that's such good advice, especially highlighting how competitive it is now as well, to really highlight those skills that you want so you can specialize in them. I think that's really good advice for people nowadays, because I feel like sometimes you think, okay, I need to know everything and be good at everything. But when you try to do that, you kind of stretch yourself thin, and then you don't really specialize. It's hard to. You only have so much capacity in yourself. So yeah, I think that was great. So now for the exciting part, we're getting into our game segment. It's going to be hot takes or nuance. So I'm just going to share my screen with you really quick.
Okay.
Okay. How's it looking? Can you see the full... Actually, no, you can't. Can you see the full screen here?
I see half of the screen. Oh, now
Full
okay,
screen?
better now. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this is Hot Take or Nuance with Joseph Ha.
Okay.
Alrighty. To get into the how to play, so we present to you bold, viral style statements relating to AI, change, and psychology. So you must respond to one of 3 options, a little bit contradicting to the name since we have 3 options. So the hot take, if you believe that it's mostly true. If it needs nuance, some further explaining that it doesn't describe the whole truth. Or if it's misleading and you think that it needs to be reframed in a different direction, then you can explain your reasoning in 2 to 3 sentences, but please don't feel limited in that sense. If you feel that it needs some extra explanation, please go ahead. How does that sound to you?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, let's get started. Okay, so the first question. AI makes students more lazy.
It needs nuance. It depends on what students, at what stage of the academic career they're in.
100%. I agree. I feel like sometimes that if they're just using it to kind of execute not simple tasks, but maybe if you think of it as doing the readings for themselves just to make the notes, but they're not actually engaging in these notes at all. They're not actually looking it over. They're just using it to kind of submit it, or if they have to. I think that's a really good answer.
Yeah.
Alrighty. For our next one, AI won't replace you, but your coworker who uses AI will.
That makes you think. I think I'm leaning towards hot take because AI is here to stay, and as you're seeing a lot of these companies and their transformations internally, a lot of these companies are adopting AI with open arms at the moment, and your coworkers or whoever adopts AI with open arms and is able to implement it within their ways of working, I think their efficiency and productivity will increase more than those who may not be willing to use AI. And we've seen this internally, and we've seen this in other case studies as well. And so I think the data supports that.
Yeah, the reason why I asked you this question actually was because I talked to a couple of Lenovo professionals and I actually asked them the reverse question that AI is going to take over people's jobs. And they specifically said, no, it's not going to replace the person. Yes, maybe some of the simpler, more basic tasks, but the people who are able to use AI as a tool to be able to execute using AI for those repetitive or more simple tasks, those people are going to replace you. So I think I'm glad that you said hot take.
Yeah. Awesome. So, next question. People don't resist change, they resist losing control.
Needs nuance. I think that's one of the many factors that does support that statement. It might be losing control. It might be as simple as they just don't have the resources to get started, and it could be as simple as that. But they might be willing to, let's say, quote unquote, lose control for the time being, just with having an open mind to adopt whatever that change could be.
Right.
Alrighty. So for our psychology students out there, you need a PhD to make it in psych.
No, not at all. I like pursuing a PhD because I do want to solidify myself as an expert in what I do. But it depends on how much you're willing to specialize. And especially for students who are starting out in their early careers, after a few set number of years, you're going to realize if you want to become more of a generalist and take on a generalist approach and be more adaptable versus being more of a specialist and maybe kind of drilling down into a particular skill set or industry. So I think it all depends on where you want to take your career. But
Right.
to answer that question, you don't need a psychology to succeed in the field of psychology. I'm sorry, PhD to succeed in this field.
I
Yeah.
think that was a perfect answer.
Yeah. Okay. So, our big four corporate question. Big four companies don't hire the best candidates, they hire the most connected ones.
What's the third one? Misleading?
Yes.
Yeah.
Incorrect? Yeah, that's misleading. I think having folks who know the industry and having those mentors and guidance in place does help so that you can prepare yourself kind of early on. But that's not a necessary component when you're applying for these roles in a Big Four organization, and certainly not in the realm of competency. At the end of the day, if you're competent and you can exude that and portray that in your interviews and the people that you work with, then I think that alone could stand here.
Perfect. Alrighty. So for the next question, anyone can be a consultant because they don't do anything, they just talk.
Wow, this is making me have like an internal conflict here. But all jokes aside, I would definitely say misleading. I mean, based on the consultants or the people that you may see portrayed in media, maybe they come off as being able to articulate well and provide that effective storytelling, and maybe they're good at talking in general. But a lot of what they talk about, it can be backed up based on the hours and hours of research that they may have done and all of the analysis they may have pondered over, which allows them to talk about their craft in a more effective manner compared to someone else who may not have done all of that homework beforehand. So I
Right.
think
Yeah.
doing all of that legwork beforehand just shows that you're able to talk about it effectively.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes the talking part of the job, correct me if I'm wrong, but part of it is so you can make the information more digestible for those who are unfamiliar, like you said earlier, with all the research that's backing it up. So sometimes I guess others may see it as, oh, this is easy, I can do that, but it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of work.
And just one more point to that. I think at the end of the day, it's that all of this can be taught. So depending on what company that you work with, you may, for example, learned the pyramid principle for effective communication, crafted by Barbara Minto from McKinsey, where they help kind of break down getting the high-level points across and then structuralizing that high-level key takeaway with 3 main arguments. And then if the audience has more time to dive into the details, then you can support 3 additional details that follow up through each of the pillars of the main arguments there. So in terms of framing your communication and how you talk, all of this can be taught. And for you to continuously learn and apply yourself is one way for you to kind of get better at storytelling, especially.
Oh, perfect. Alrighty.
Okay, moving on to a finance question. Choosing a degree based on salary is practical, not shallow.
Yes and no. Needs nuance in this case. I think it comes down to the individual and what they prioritize. If they want to prioritize for a job, if they are willing to maybe sacrifice work-life balance and other aspects that may come with a higher salary, for example, then maybe they are taking more of a practical approach, and maybe they have some sort of a financial timeline in place where they might be thinking, maybe if I just stick it out for 2 to 5 years, then that will allow me to kind of build up a budget for a new house later down the road. I would see that as more of taking on more of a practical approach to a high salary. So I think at the end of the day, it depends on what you prioritize. If you want to prioritize other life obligations and your hobbies and whatnot, then I think that's perfectly reasonable as well.
I think that was a great answer.
Awesome.
And now moving on to our final question, which is also a finance question. Budgeting tools fail because they ignore human impulses.
Sorry, I think the screen froze there.
Oh, no worries.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah. Budgeting tools fail because they ignore human impulses.
That's a great question. Budgeting tools fail because they ignore human impulses.
Or maybe not specifically just tools, just budgeting frameworks, budgeting, even advice in general.
Methods.
Yeah, methods. Advice in general.
Methods.
Yeah, methods.
I think I would say it needs nuance up to a certain degree, based on the individual's approach to finance and how they what their mindset is. If you tend to be more of an impulsive person, you can have all of the tools in your arsenal, all of the resources available, but if you decide to, let's say you take advantage of it and experiment with it, but at the end of the day, it comes down to that individual decision and that conscientious decision to say, I know I should be budgeting XYZ amount this month, but I'm just gonna say, hey, screw it. I'm just gonna pull an impulsive purchase here that way. Maybe this statement might be applicable for those types of individuals, whereas for other types of individuals, maybe they're more systematic and procedural with everything that they do, and they decide to stick with their budgeting resources and tools, then perhaps the statement might not be applicable for them.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's a great answer.
Alrighty, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen with you now.
I think I was boring in my responses because
Oh, no.
nuances there, right? Or need nuance.
But
No, that's perfect.
it's hard to answer those questions, right? Like they're kind of some of them are loaded questions. So honestly, you did a good job.
No, you did a great job. And even honestly, having more nuance is great because a lot of the times people just take it at face value. They don't really try to think further or have a different perspective because there's a lot more than meets the eye at the end of the day.
Totally.
Alrighty.
Yeah. I don't like to look at things black and white, and part of being human is to be adaptable and make those decisions based on the situation.
For sure.
Speaking like a true change manager.
Exactly.
Alrighty, now getting into the AI people and the future of work. So to continue more into AI, just for people who are unfamiliar with the topic, what is Gen AI?
What is Gen AI? Well, it stands for generative artificial intelligence, but this definition is starting to be configured a little bit based on how the technology is evolving and merging. But in a nutshell, in terms of what Gen AI is in our work, in our workplace, is the having the ability for a tool or technology to automate or streamline a task in a nutshell. So whether that's related to kind of text-based generation, content-based generation, or more analytical tasks like reconciliation tasks or variance analysis, the term Gen AI itself is all-encompassing. I like to think about it that way. And then there's different forms of AI within that umbrella term.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So you're working directly with Gen AI and digital enablement. What first drew you into the world of AI in the context of organizational transformation? Was there a specific project or moment that made you see AI's potential in a new way?
There wasn't any specific moments that I can pinpoint, but throughout throughout the past few years, I saw where the technology trend was headed, especially with cloud computing and eventually getting into the streamlining of tasks. I saw that this space was definitely here to stay, and I wanted to ride this wave of AI. And so I wanted to become an expert in something that was new and constantly evolving. And because I realized it's here to stay, I realized this is where I want to be in, at least for the next few years.
Oh, that's awesome. So you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in quantifying human behavior and how that can be complex. You specifically noted how the human aspect of it is secondary and not as critical or deemed like a primary aspect of it. So how do you find the balance between what the data shows alongside the real world context of experiences and psychology behind people's actions?
Are you looking for a specific example? 'Cause
Not a
I have a
specific
very
example. If Go ahead,
Yeah,
share away.
I have a relevant use case that I can kind of draw upon right now. So, for example, with quantifying AI, the usage and adoption of AI, sometimes that could take the form of many different measures. Right now, what we've noticed or previously noticed in the past year is certain low adoption and usage of AI in certain groups of the firm, and having the ability to quantify the human behavioral components of, okay, why is adoption low in this particular part of the group here. I think that's where your organizational psychology background could come into play and start gathering the set of data or the people in this case who are not driving high usage that you would normally anticipate. And then sitting down with them, and maybe it's in the form of a focus group session or an interview, sitting down and trying to gather the key themes for why this might be occurring, I think has been truly kind of supplementary to what we're finding on the quantitative side. So for example, reasons could be, whether it's in the form of, I think the UI is not there for me to kind of be comfortable with navigating, or maybe they're waiting for AI to get better, or maybe they just don't have the right use cases kind of tailored for them. And so sometimes our job will be to help kind of sit down with them and identify what those use cases may be, and then start actively piloting and testing them to make sure that completion rate is up there.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great question. Kind of as a follow-up, what are some significant challenges you have faced, if you have any examples that you can tell us about, or something that's almost your worst nightmare?
Let's see. I don't have too many nightmares these days.
Honestly,
That's
that's
good.
good.
That's good.
Sometimes no challenges is good challenges,
Right.
or is a good thing. But
Sorry, continue.
If I had to draw from a significant challenge that I've faced previously, I would say it boils down, goes back to what I mentioned before, just in terms of having change management being introduced at the seat of the table later down the road. I've had an experience where change management or our team that helps drive the behavioral components for a new change, we were introduced on an ad hoc basis after the change. This new technology, in this case, was already introduced, implemented for our client that we were serving at the time. So with this particular example, our client, their organization, implemented this new, what we call MDM technology that allowed them to better manage and process basically physician data and healthcare organization data. And a year in, they realized that the training was not on par with navigating this new system and technology. And the change management team was not adequately in place to help kind of handhold our client throughout this process. And so with us being introduced late in the game, a year in, we had to pick up the pieces and identify, okay, what was the previous state before this new change occurred, and how can we retroactively bridge that gap between the previous state and the future state so that we can meet them where they are, going back to our question earlier, and start developing these protocols in place that can retroactively fix how they might have been using this new system.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of just had a follow-up question on that. So recently, or last term, I did a project in my IO Psych course, and we focused on training, learning, and development in organizations. And we utilized the Phillips and colleagues model a lot, where we really emphasized on trying to get that number of return on investment and how it is pretty difficult to do that, especially when you're looking at more qualitative data or looking more at the specific behavior, because behavior can be sometimes hard to quantify. So kind of what are your thoughts on that? Like, have you seen that issue a lot on kind of looking at the long term, the aftermath of, did the training actually work? Did the employees actually learn? Was development actually made?
Yeah, I think the importance of pulse checks may come into play here. Let's say after the training or learning and development activity or system just recently occurred, perhaps you may have administered a post-training follow-up just to determine the effectiveness of the training. Maybe the respondents may be enthusiastic in agreeing to all of the questions in that pulse check survey. But over time, you also want to capture the routine sentiments throughout the way in terms of the longevity of how long they're adapting their new ways of working because of this new training here. So whether that's in the form of a weekly or monthly or bi-monthly, whatever that routine may be, I think it's important to identify that trending behavior over time and also complement that with the hard quantitative side of the actual metrics here. So if they're using a new AI tool, for example, you can check, okay, what's their usage looking like? Are they using it at a service level, or are they drilling down into more different features like the agents that are involved as part of the AI tool? I think having that routine system in place can help you make a confident decision to determine if that training activity was effective.
Right. So, okay, so I'm actually personally really excited to hear your answer on this because I graduated under 2 years ago. So I feel like when I was a student at university, AI was kind of emerging, like ChatGPT, all that stuff. So, and there was a lot of debate about how much we should use and right? So anyway, as the question goes, a lot of students right now are told that using AI on assignments is an academic misconduct, which creates a particular narrative around AI. In contrast, how do organizations use AI in ways that still honor authenticity, accountability, and ethical standards?
Yeah, great question. What our company emphasizes is the human in the loop component is what we call it. We always want to do our due diligence and check the outputs and the sources of the outputs of the AI tools that you're using. So I don't know how diligent schools are with this sort of principle. But in the workplace for us especially, we always want to trust and verify, never
Right.
at the outputs of the AI tool at face value, and also dig deeper if the data does not seem too reliable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great answer.
I'm really glad that you mentioned human in the loop because right now in my project management class for a group project, we are doing a section because it's a multi-part project for specifically human in the loop. So we did a project case report, and right now we're utilizing AI to see how it can either fix or enhance or have any input or feedback for us. But I think like one of the things that my professor really, really emphasized was don't just put your report in there. Add your sources, add like the data points, like bring in like everything that you use so it can actually say, okay, well, I'm not just looking at this to reword it or to reach to outside sources that are kind of out of the scope of what you're specifically working on. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. And to just add a little bit of insight for you, they are starting to get into implementing AI and teaching students how to use AI. There's another communications course that I took, and it was specifically for utilizing AI to help you write meeting minutes, to help you communicate better, to help you just using it in a more of an authentic way and making sure that it's not doing the work for you. You're working alongside of it, and you still have to have a certain level of discernment with it. So
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that that discussion is being held at your school especially, and also other schools as well.
What's your personal, like ethically speaking, if you were like, right, like a professor or anything like that, like if you were teaching, like in that sense, what would you expect from students about how, like their limits on AI?
Yeah, I would first emphasize that I'm not gonna, I can't be micromanaging everyone in terms of how they do
Right.
assignments. So if you're using AI to do all of your questions and assignments, then you're just cheating yourself, and in the long run, you're just gonna be worse off compared to others who are using AI to maximize your performance there. So if I was a professor, I would encourage the use of AI for very specific use cases.
For sure.
That's in the form of kind of idea generation and brainstorming, obviously not exactly copying everything word for word, maybe structuralizing your thought processes. I think AI does come into play for some of those kind of components, but I think you need to have that first human creativity spark for you to start turning to other tools and resources for you to continue progressing down whatever you're tracking towards.
I really like the point that you said that it's not, it will not help long term. It's, I mean, like I said, I've graduated, I've talked to people who are postgraduates as well, who I know have, like, they heavily used it. And, you know, they might, some of them are in their jobs, they, you know, it's not practical. Like now that they're in it, you know what I mean? Like it's not, they can't be using it as much. I don't know if it'll be implemented more in the future, but it's hard when it comes actually face to face and you have to do things on your own. So, I mean, it's kind of, we'll see how it goes, but moderation I think is key kind of for that sort of thing. And like you said, it's very circumstantial as well, like depending on what it is you're asking them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
and the companies are going to find out quick if you used AI through college and try to get the job that you wanted. And
Exactly.
if they realize that you're not competent and fit for the job and it was basically AI talking for you, then they're going to find that out.
It will leak through for sure.
So continuing on, I love that we just had that conversation. So right now you're balancing advanced research in your PhD with industry work and consulting. So when you look ahead, what excites you the most about the future intersection between psychology, change management, and AI as a whole?
Yeah, I think in line with what companies are projecting and adjusting for their annual outlook, you can see that a lot of these companies are shifting to a more agentic landscape and incorporating agent usage as AI continues to evolve. I think that will be super interesting to look into, especially as agents take on the autonomous form of some of the tasks that you're streamlining. And that makes me question, where does that leave us in terms of freed up time or usage? I think I would predict that having more of an agentic play into your ways of working could free you up for more strategic or creative tasks and having the ability to kind of manage maybe a team of AI agents for you to start making more kind of data-driven decisions based on what their outputs may be, as opposed to being bogged down by bottlenecks throughout the process or waiting for certain data sources to come into play. There might be a lot of technical components that we humans might be bogged down in as part of our work, but if that starts to free up, I do get optimistic about where that could take us in terms of exercising our more creative brain there.
Awesome. Okay, so we're just going to be like moving to a little bit of a different theme here. But we also like to be honest about the role money plays in people's journeys because it's such a real factor in education and career choices. When you think about planning your education and career, what role does money play in your decision making, like topics like stability, salary, and financial security?
Good question. I think maybe I do take on a more practical approach to pay and jobs and how I'm taking my career here.
Right.
I think pay and salary definitely has a factor in my. Are you asking from a personal lens or just in general?
You can do both if you have an answer for both. Yeah.
We're getting deep here.
It's whatever you'd like to say.
Yeah, I think money definitely has an influence in terms of the career direction that I want to take.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because maybe I have too many hobbies that I need to keep up on. But at the end of the day, I do prioritize flexibility and autonomy. And for me to not have the hassle, the stress of worrying about finances, allows me to free up other obligations that I want to prioritize.
Right.
Okay, I think that's
Did I
perfect.
answer?
You did a great job. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course. So kind of just branching off on what you already said, I know you like really emphasize on that flexibility and just being able to, like you said, do all the hobbies that you love to do. So if you had to explain your philosophy on money and happiness to a friend, how would you describe the connection between financial success, emotional well-being, and just living a meaningful life?
Yeah, great question. I know there was a study on correlating the happiness scores of salary, and I think it was up to like 70K or so, where happiness starts to become stabilized or stagnant past that mark. I think this rings true to a certain extent. Once your basic needs and your I guess looking at the autonomy or the hierarchy of needs, if all of those are accomplished and money helps you to accomplish that, after a certain extent, the more money that you have, I don't think the more of those needs would be maximized in a sense, or the happier you will be. So I do adhere to that philosophy, but for me personally, I think that makes sense. As long as my kind of needs are met there, then I don't really care if I'm making more money, to be honest.
Okay, 70K a year. Awesome, perfect, thank you.
All right. So for students who are curious about this field from a practical perspective, in very general terms, what does the salary range look like for someone in roles similar to yours from early career to where you are now?
Great question. My role specifically as a senior associate, this is pretty equivalent to, if you're sticking to the consulting industry lens, it's equivalent to senior consultant that you may see at other Big Four firms, maybe assistant manager in some firms. But in terms of the consulting industry, this pay band for this role is variable because based on the role that you're applying for, if they require an MBA for a different type of role compared to the role that I'm in, that may have higher pay bands. Where that could be extended to up to 170K, for example. And on the lower end, you could be looking at 80, 90K, depending on the specific role. So as I mentioned, the pay band is variable, but depending on the credentials that you come in with and the specific project or role that you're applying for, I think that could help dictate where you should be seeing yourself placed within that pay band.
Awesome. I think that's really useful advice and tips. Awesome. So if you had to describe your professional journey so far in just one word, what would it be and why?
Professional journey in one word.
You can do two if one doesn't do it for you.
Can I get away with three?
You can. We'll allow three.
Okay. Because I got the word "and" in there.
Sure.
I'll say driven and adaptable. And do I?
You can. Yeah, and why?
And why? Well, driven because at this stage of my career, I'm hungry to learn more. I'm always willing to grow and continue improving my game. And I'm not willing to pigeonhole myself. I do want to be flexible and learn many new things. And the reason why I said adaptable is because, especially within the work that I do, you need to be adaptable to be able to learn the complexities, the nuances of different industries, of different businesses, of different sectors, of different service offerings that you might be tapped into to help kind of provide support for. So I think these two traits would serve any other consultant well as they're entering this field.
Great.
Alrighty, so you kind of already answered this question that I had for you, but it was supposed to be thinking back to your younger self, maybe an undergrad or just starting out. What is one piece of advice that you would give that version of you? And now it doesn't necessarily have to be career oriented, even if it's just a personal piece of advice.
I would tell my younger self that you need to have something outside of work, outside of the daily grind that you can rely on and fall back on. And the reason why I say this is because I think I was a lot more driven back then. I'm not saying that I'm not now, but I was a lot more laser focused. And sometimes that made me push other obligations in my life out of the picture. And, whether that's related to relationships, kind of taking care of yourself, going to the gym, sticking with your hobbies, having that mental clarity, whether it's in the form of reading or whatever it is outside of work. I think it's important for you to have that in your back pocket and continue keeping that up, because work isn't everything.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we're all human beings that we need to have something like a support system.
Yeah, work-life balance and everything like that, right?
Exactly.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to add on to that because, like Fiona said, the work-life balance is so important. And even now, like in my last year, I found myself being really hard on myself and like being so laser focused into my work that I realized that I wasn't hanging out with my friends as much. I wasn't hanging out with my family as much. And I know that obviously school can take a lot of time away, but even in school, I feel like that's a good time to learn that work-life balance, to learn like, okay, I'm managing so many things, but it's also a little bit more forgiving than when you're out there in the real world with like in a job. And if they are super demanding of you, I feel like not only do you have to learn the skills to be adaptable, like what you mentioned earlier, but it's also just being kind to yourself, like giving yourself that grace and being able to say, okay, well, I'm working at this job that I love, but also what's the point of the job when you come home and there's not that much there.
Right.
You kind of have to be able to like you said as well, like have that support system, have people that bring like joy in your life and be able to do the things that you love, because at the end of the day, like you also said, work is not everything. And there's way more to life than than just work.
That was great. Oh my God.
And for all of you who might be listening to this and share the same sentiments as me and Victoria, I hope this message does apply to you, and just know that you need to take care of yourself.
That's awesome, guys. Okay, so Joey, before we wrap up, is there anything you're currently working on, whether in your research at KPMG or personally, that you're excited about and would like to share with listeners? And for anyone who really connected with what you shared today, where can they find you and learn more about your work or connect with you?
Yeah, first part of the question, I'll tackle that in two ways.
Sure.
I'm doing my PhD research on the flow state, and just in terms of looking at the impact of leadership on flow state. So as we continue to, as the flow state literature continues to evolve, I do see a lot of different antecedents, the predictor variables that may influence the flow state to emerge within the workplace. So happy to nerd out over that if you're interested in that as well.
Sure.
So that's been a big project of mine. Outside of work, outside of school, I'm also training BJJ, Jiu-Jitsu, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh.
Hopefully I can get a competition as a blue belt later down the road, so I'm training for that as well.
Good for you.
That's so exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Continue.
I was going to address the second part of Fiona's question there.
Yes,
Sure.
please go ahead.
So yeah, where can listeners find me? I like to stay on top of LinkedIn. I'm not too active, but if there's like events going on, or if I were to do something that I thought would be worthy of sharing, please feel free to connect with me and stay up to date on my progress here, and I would love to connect with you all as well.
Amazing. So yeah, kind of just to follow up, you mentioned your project and how, please nerd out with us, please.
Do you want me to share more about it now?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm looking at, it's basically a moderated mediation model in a sense. So I'm looking at the flow state as the dependent variable, and I'm looking at the different leadership styles as the IV independent variable and how they may influence flow state to emerge. Now, it's more of a not observation, but ESM, experience sampling method type of study, daily diary study. So within the workplace, I'm trying to correlate under certain leadership styles, is flow state more likely to emerge? So comparing and contrasting psychopathic leadership versus, now I'm rebranding that as abusive supervision, future studies at the moment. But in contrast to transformational leadership, I have a prediction that transformational leadership would allow flow state to emerge a lot more. But, that's my prediction at the moment, but I'm also looking at self-efficacy as a moderator, influencing that relationship between the IV and DV.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting work for you to share. I think it's also really interesting. I know you've relabeled it as, what was it? Abusive leadership?
Abusive supervision.
Supervision.
To be, a better construct for them.
Sure, understandable. But yeah, I'm super excited for that. So I guess we're getting to the end of our podcast, and it's time for us to do our outro. So Joey, thank you so much for being here and for being so open about both the academic and consulting sides of your journey. For students listening, including us, it's really grounding to hear what this path can look like beyond just course outlines.
Thank you for having me.
And it makes careers at the intersection of psychology, organizations, and technology feel more real and a lot less intimidating. Conversations like this can really help people feel more curious and confident about exploring similar paths. And it's honestly genuinely inspiring to see you blend people-centered change and AI in a way that still keeps humans at the center.
Awesome. So thank you again for your time and for sharing your experience with us. We're really grateful to have had you on.
And thank you for everyone listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you
next time on the Enriched Mindset Podcast.